Hello, my name is Kieran, and I like to make video games. This month, my goal has been to learn how to make 3D characters. And today, I'm going to run through the process that I've worked out end to end. So here we start with our blank Blender project. We have our cube. We love the cube. Important thing to note is that the origin of this cube is going to be the feet of our character. We're going to use that once we import it into Blender to know where our character is standing. So whenever we edit this, we have to be careful not to move the origin of the cube, which is why you see me move the vertices, not the actual object. And we start off by deleting the left half because we are going to be using the mirror tool to mirror this character because they will be symmetrical. I'm using a lot of keyboard shortcuts here. Important ones to note are G for moving your selection, R for rotating your selection, and S for scaling your selection. Once you have one of those options selected, using the X, Y, or Z key will lock your movement to one of those grids. This is pretty invaluable to working in Blender, and I strongly recommend memorizing those and making those muscle memory. I'm using the add menu here to create a separate cube for the head. I'll be doing that for the arms and legs as well when we get to it. Whenever I make one of these characters, I always create a cube for the head and think it's really cute and don't want to change it, don't want to reshape it into an actual head. So I decided for this one, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reshape it into a CRT monitor. So it's got a little bit more character than a cube, but I adore the cube head. I can't get enough of the cube head. As I said at the start, we love the cube. Making a separate object for these extremities is important, especially later when we get to rigging and animating, because it reduces the amount of collateral warping that happens. Another important thing to note is using the ring tool to create these joints with a lot of vertices. You don't want too many, at least I don't, because I like that blocky look. But getting a good amount of vertices is really important to giving Blender and the model a good amount of wiggle room to animate with. I've created models in the past that didn't use a lot of vertices, and as a result, often the animations looked really buggy and not good. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So here I'm going to move on to texture painting. There are a lot of ways to make a texture for a Blender model, but I like to use Blender's texture paint tool. So for that, we just create an image and we apply it to our model in a texture, and then we can get to painting. I really messed around with the face a lot. I could do this for hours. All right, and on to rigging. I'm using Blender's Rigify plugin, which is extremely important and is going to be really important once we get into Unity. So right now I'm just reshaping the skeleton to fit into the model we've made. I'm making a simplified humanoid shape. This is different from the other humanoid shape because it doesn't have a lot of the complexity that we won't need, like fingers and toes. We're going to be able to use pretty much every bone the skeleton gives us. It's pretty simple, but it's really important that the skeleton matches the model. All right, now that the skeleton's in place, we can select both the skeleton and the model and hit Control P to parent, making sure to parent the model to the skeleton with automatic weights. And if that's done properly, we should be able to enter pose mode and pose our model. I'm pretty happy with how this model is posing, so we can move on right to animation. All right, here we have our animation screen. So first thing I want to do is insert a keyframe of our T-pose at index 0. That's frame 0. The way I'm gonna split this up is this track is going to contain all of our animations, and once we get into Unity, we can split up the animations there. So I'm gonna hit record and start posing. I'm gonna start off with an idle animation, which is just going to feature a little bit of bouncing and a little bit of breathing to show that our robot is alive. I'm going to do 3 animations for this. There will be idle, walking, and an attack. Our idle animation will be from frames 1 to frame 30, and frame 31 will begin our walking animation. We are going to use the model's origin in order to determine how much distance it should travel when walking. So its walking animation should include a keyframe at the end where the model has moved whatever distance. I think this is going to be a little fast, but we can fix it later. All right, and we're on to attack. With the attack, I want to give it a little bit of weight, so in addition to moving the arm, I also rotate the spine a bit, and I rotate the head to make sure that the face is looking at where the model is attacking. And then on the release, the arm swings to the side, the spine sort of straightens out, and the head almost rotates the other way in order to show that the attack is going through. And then from there, the robot will return to the idle animation. Here's a sword model that I've already made. We'll tie this to the robot's hand and use it for the attack. All right, so now we can export our robot. We want to export as an FBX, and the FBX file is a container which will have our animations and our model and our material values, but not the texture. We'll have to import that separately, which isn't too hard. We want to make sure that the forward value is correct, and we want to only select our rig and model. Make sure not to select camera or light or any other piece of the scene that you do not want, because that will mess things up. And so here I have a scene, which I've added a few starter things to. We've got a camera rig, which uses Cinemachine. We've got some UI elements, some lighting, skybox, basic stuff. So yeah, so we can drag the model into the scene and the texture too. Here's a guy. Let's center this, and I want to make it a bit smaller. I think I made it too big. That's better. All right, we unpack the model, and then we go into our model info. I'm going to start making the animations. So first, we want an avatar, which will be used for running our animations. And in the animation tab, this is how we split out the animations that we made earlier. So we'll split out our idle, which will be 1 to 30, and our walk, which will be 31 to 60, and our attack, which will be 61 to 80. Also important to note, we need to set our root motion node to be spine 001. That's how our script is able to get our distance traveled during our animation. Now that that's done, let's start building out all the things we need for our character. I'm kind of going to speed through this, but we got a character controller, we've got player input, and we've got player controller. These player input and player controller scripts are based off the 3D game kit, which I will link in the description. It's another plugin I'm using. I'll list out all the plugins I'm using in the description as well. All right, so here I've made a pretty simple animator. We have our idle, our locomotion, and our attack. This is the idle. This is the walk. And here's our attack. And the logic is pretty simple. When we are moving, we switch to the locomotion state, which is the walk animation. And when we hit attack, it plays the attack animation and returns the idle. You can go a lot more complex, and eventually I would throw in a state machine to deal with like jumping and falling and all of that. But for a simple project like this, we just need the 3. So we're going to plug that in. I'm going to pull in the sword object, which I'd already made, that uses the melee weapon script from 3D Game Kit, as well as a fixed update follower. The fixed update follower is a very simple script that ties the object to another object, and we are going to use that to tie the weapon to the bone. That is the hand bone. And with that, we should be about all set. All right, so I'm going to quickly build out a level for us to walk in using Unity Probuilder. Unity Probuilder is an invaluable package. It's really good for building out geometry within Unity. I wouldn't really use it for building models, but for building 3D areas, it's really good. So we're just going to extrude some geometry here and make sure to mark it as environment so that the player will collide with it. All right, let's take a second to go into the code. This is the update function for the player controller. So this will be called every frame to determine what the player is doing. I want to mainly focus on the attack and the movement, the forward movement, which also handles turning. I'm focusing on those because those are the only things I've actually made work right now. This is the script from 3D Game Kit, although I have been making a lot of edits, largely to understand how it works. So I'm going to be trying to explain what I've learned here. First, we check if we are attacking, which is based on the input, click or the attack button, and whether or not we are able to attack. For instance, you cannot attack if you are already attacking. And all this function does, all this check does is if we are attacking, then we set the animator to attack. 3D Game Kit is really smart in that based on the animation, the sword hitbox turns on when the attack is going through. So all we need to do is tell the animator to run the attack animation. And then from there, we determine our forward movement, which if we are attacking, will be 0. If we're not attacking, then we get our player input and we curve that towards our desired speed. And we do that so that we can't instantly go into a sprint. We want to have the player build up some speed over time, which is what this acceleration is for. And then, similar to the attack, all we have to do is set the animation to move at that speed. The animation will move at the speed that we give it. And then down on animator move, which is another update function, but specifically for the animation. When the animator moves, we get the distance that it's moved, and we also get our rotation from our input, whether the left or the right is being held, and we move the player in that direction, rotating the animation as we go. It's a lot simpler than I would have thought. All right, and this is the finished product. There's definitely a lot of improvement to be made. The attack turned out pretty floppy. The idle doesn't loop perfectly, and that walk is pretty floaty and pretty slow. A lot slower than I thought it would end up being. For a fully fledged game, I would definitely want to keep on going back and keep tweaking those animations until they felt right. Today's date as I'm recording this is August 26th, 2023. At the beginning of this year, I could barely put together a 2D Mario clone. But thanks to all of the people who made the video tutorials I watched, and all the people who write on forum posts, and all the people who make all of the plugins I use for Unity and Blender, and all the people who make Unity and Blender, I've come farther than I ever would have imagined at the beginning of this year. I'm gonna keep doing monthly updates on my progress. I don't know if I'm gonna keep making YouTube videos. For this project, my next goal would be to work out collision, making destructible objects and enemies. I hope you got something from this. I know the quality wasn't great, the video or the audio quality. I'm still learning how to edit, just like I'm still learning how to make games. If you got nothing else from this video, I hope you know that if I can learn to do this in a few months, so can you. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope to see you in September.